Bruder, man muss mich aussehen, Digga.
Die haben es ansehen.
Könnt ihr irgendwas reinstecken? Ja, ich stecke was rein.
Ich finde, das ist so.
Das ist ein bisschen aufregend.
Dear English course, dear Anna, before I start with my presentation, I just want to let out a quick statement that this topic is not for the light part, that it is partially very gruesome, and it is, and like, if you feel like uncomfortable at any point, it's okay to just tell me, or I can skip over a few files because it is kind of pretty bad. And another thing, if there are any questions, you can also ask me during the GFS. You don't have to wait until the end. You can just interrupt, raise your hand, and then you can ask your questions. So without further ado, my presentation is going to be about Shall we start? Yeah, my GFS is going to be about the death sentence in the USA. So, we're going to talk about a few things today. First of all, how did the death sentence come into the US? How people have been executed along the years, and then we're going to talk about the statistics of people affected by the death penalty in the US. And then we'll look at the US and relative to all of the world. And then we will talk about 3 notable cases, and then we'll have I will state a few arguments for and against the death sentence, and then we will have a discussion where we will talk about how you stand to the matter. Anyway, so the death penalty existed since the 18th century before Christ, so a very long time ago in Babylon. And then across history, it just continued spreading into Europe and eventually reached Britain. And then, because Britain liked to colonize a lot, they made their way to the New World, including the USA. And there they implemented their laws. And then the first recorded execution was of Captain George Kendall, and he was executed for being a Spanish spy. Then the death penalty was spread across all of the colonies of the New World, which included, well, all of the colonies from Great Britain and Spain. But then, after the colonial period, the death sentence persisted in the USA, and as of today, 27 states still allow the death penalty. So the methods of how people were executed. First of all, the oldest one was hanging. It was implemented from 1890 to 1996, so until relatively recently, which is quite horrifying because hanging is very brutal, but it is done in a way that ensures that the person does not suffer for too long, or does not get mutilated while being hung. Basically, how hanging works is you just stand on a podium of sort, and then then the noose is tied around your neck, and then the floor under you is released. So if you get released too fast, it's just very brutal and unnecessary. That's why it was discontinued. Then you have the firing squad, which is still implemented today and was first implemented in the year 2010. And how that works is that there are a group of 5 shooters, and each of them have a few bullets, and one of those bullets, one of those magazines is filled with blanks. So basically what happens is the 4 shooters fire at the executed person, and then the blanks are their purpose is to like to feel somehow innocent or like not to feel guilty because you could have had the magazine with the blank shots. Then there's still there's the electric chair and basically what's up? Thomas?
How does this work? So there are some magazines with blanks and one without.
No, there is. All of them are filled except one, and then people just stand in a row and they just fire at the victim, and then you kind of have a sense of closure knowing that you could have had the one that was empty, basically. It still fires, it still recoils, so you never really knew. That was kind of part of it. Yeah. Then there's the electric chair, where it was implemented as a more humane method than the prior two, and nowadays it is still implemented, but it is not really implemented if there are like other possibilities. For example, the lethal injection, which is by far the most modern method. Felix?
Yeah, but I thought the only method which is illegal today is the electric chair.
Well, I mean, yes. Yes and no, because they're all legal. It's just that they're barely used. For example, the gas chamber I think was last used in the year like some 2005-ish, and the electric chair was last used in 2010. And no, the firing squad was last used 2010. I mean, they still exist, but they're just not widespread at all because, unlike the lethal injection, they're not as humane.
Okay.
Anyway, the gas chamber is, well, another attempt of a more merciful death. Well, attempt is because, I say attempt because it's not humane at all. Killing somebody with cyanide gas is really long and torturous. And it was last used in the year 1999, and yeah. Still implemented, just if there are any other options, you just don't. And then the lethal injection, which is the most humane method. You are anesthetized and then you are paralyzed with some sort of serum until your heart eventually stops. So you don't feel any bit of the pain because you're already under anesthesia when you are gonna die. Anyway, now we're going to look over some statistics, and this is very important when it comes to whether or not the death penalty is morally worthy accepted or not. Here, of course, the amount of death sentences are decreasing from year to year, and the amount of people being amount of states that are not using the death sentence anymore are increasing, especially after the year 2005. And then we look at the more interesting graph, which shows us who is being executed and who were their victims. Here we see that 40% of the sentenced prisoners were black people. And considering that the 12% of the population are black people, shows a lot about who is being given the death sentence, regardless of like crime. And here we also see the victims of the executed people are almost never black or Latino, but mostly white. Felix?
Can you zoom in a bit?
Oh
really
yes.
small. Thank you.
I didn't know you can't. My bad. Anyway, so that just shows you that the death penalty is very prejudiced towards crimes against white people and extremely prejudiced against black individuals. We will go over this later as well. Then we will talk about the difference between USA and all the other 55 countries that still allow the death penalty. So the USA is the only one in like the Western world, which is like part of the European Union and such. Like everyone else has already abolished it, and they're still the only ones who have it. But the USA is surprisingly, and I know this, among the countries with the least amounts of executions per year. This has to do with the long bureaucratic processes, because you can't just execute people at will like they do in Saudi Arabia. There are lots of people waiting to be executed, but there are at the end there's not many people who are. Like if I remember correctly, there are some 2,000 individuals waiting to be executed in America, and only 30 of those get executed per year. Meanwhile, in other countries like Saudi Arabia, there are some 180 executions per year. Meanwhile, there's only 30 people who are waiting for an execution. Yeah. And now we'll talk about the notable cases. So, as I said, disclaimer, it's really bad. So, we'll talk about Ted Bundy, who was a serial killer and rapist with dozens of victims. He was arrested in Utah in 1975, and he has, after that, escaped twice from prison. And even after that, he committed 3 more crimes in Florida before finally being recaptured and given the death penalty. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count of aggressive kidnapping. Well, his crimes are, of course, much longer than this, but these are these are the crimes that contributed to his sentence, because he has confessed to 30 of his murders, although it's suspected that there are way more. He received 3 death penalties, and that might sound very strange, but it has to do with how severe the crime is, and then the amount of death penalties also shows how soon your execution date will be. For example, somebody who has 3 death sentences will be executed before somebody who has only 1. And he was executed by electric chair on the 21st of January 1989. Then we have Timothy McVeigh, who was a domestic terrorist, and he was arrested in Oklahoma in 1995. He was known for the Oklahoma bombing, where he killed 186 people and injured 684. He did this because he thought the government was corrupt or something. I'm not really sure. He thought that all federal workers are like frauds, and this system is all corrupt and wrong. And he was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder on a federal employee, conspiracy of using a weapon of mass destruction resulting in death, and use of a weapon of mass destruction resulting in death, and destruction by explosives. And that gave him he was sentenced to death, and he was executed on the 11th of June 2001 via lethal injection. Now, we will come to the most interesting one, who was Cameron Todd Willingham. He was an alleged arsonist and was arrested in Texas 1991, and he was charged with 3 counts of murder and arson, and was executed on the 17th of February 2004. But now that this case has been reopened, it was shown that there's the proof that was given back during his trial was not so valid, and that he was probably innocent. Yes, Felix?
What is arson?
Arson is when you burn something down, burn a house down. Brandstiftung. Thanks. Yeah, and then this sparked controversy because it was a wrongful conviction, and it led to somebody's life being taken for literally no reason, or maybe no reason. It's still it's only assumed. Now we will talk about what arguments are there for the death penalty and against it. Of course, arguments for the death penalty include it acts as a deterrent for prospective criminals. So basically, when anyway, it acts as a deterrent for criminals who are going to commit crimes, which basically decreases the crime rate in a way, because having a life sentence in prison is not nearly as scary as being killed. But severe crimes, and also severe crimes, deserve severe punishments, which is also a valid point, because some, just as we stated, the other two criminals have committed horrible deeds, and sometimes just this needs to get punished accordingly. And criminals are rendered incapable of resuming their crimes, obviously after they're dead. They can't kill anyone anymore. Yes, Roman?
I'm very curious about the fact that maybe they were like inspected, and maybe you know, but I'm not sure if you know, but
Yeah.
like the criminals, like we know their motives, but like what was like going on inside their head, like
Oh,
maybe they had some illness, like mental illness or something
like
like
the other
that.
three.
Yes.
No, it was just I think for Ted Bundy it was something about he had like some sort of a traumatic childhood, and
Oh, okay.
I think it was also a very tense relationship, but this is with his partner, but I'm also not sure. And as I said, this guy was a soldier in the military, and then he came back and he thought that the system was a fraud, because he served, and now he's being treated at as the bottom of society. He was he served the country, and then now he's being treated like shit, and that's why he wanted to make
Understandable, yes.
Yeah, Felix?
How do they decide how the person is executed? So can the person decide itself, or
In
that's
some
the-
cases, yes,
that's
but
the
in some
con-
cases where there's no other option other than the lethal injection, it's mostly the lethal injection. But sometimes the person gets to decide on their own how they're executed. I
Okay.
think. Anyway, arguments against the death penalty include possible conviction of the innocent, as I stated earlier, and that revenge is not a valid argument for killing somebody, because if you kill them, that's just you did not achieve anything in the end. Like morally, you killed somebody, and the person that was your victim is not going to come back by it. So revenge is not really a plausible cause for killing somebody. And the death penalty, as stated earlier, is implemented extremely unfairly, because the defendants, who are mostly from the black community, mostly don't have the means to get themselves a proper attorney, and then they are dependent on the state attorney that they are given, and their performance varies, which means sometimes they get represented well, sometimes they don't, and well, lack of representation leads to guilty convictions, and then the death penalty depending on the crime. So now I want to ask you guys, what are your opinions on the death penalty? What do you think? Is it validated to kill somebody for such atrocious crimes, or is the life sentence enough? Yes, Roman?
Can I just step in here?
Go ahead.
I uploaded a file which you can use. If you open our skills channel, there is this debate on the channel. So I would use some of those images. But first, it's more important what you say content-wise. If you need language support, that skills file.
I wanted to answer your question.
Go ahead.
I think that the life sentence is a good measurement, but I think it's not too extreme to take the life with the death penalty, because it's 100% deserved, and you have to like have this fear factor, because if I kill a lot of people and I don't get accordingly punished for it, it's a bit sus. And I think also that now I think you have to get what you deserve, and if you kill somebody, you deserve the death penalty yourself.
Okay, Skylar, can I instigate arguments? Okay, so I want to ask you. Well, all what you said is correct, and it's also very valid. And but I want to ask you that, as we saw earlier, there was this one case where he was killed on lack of evidence. And do you think that is fair? Like, for example, somebody in your closest circles gets killed for a crime they didn't actually commit, because that can happen, and it also happens very much. And it's just, in my opinion, not fair. Sophie?
So in general, I think that the death penalty is unnecessary, because yes, it does add to the fear factor, but as you said, if someone is wrongfully convicted and then executed, then there's no way of turning back. And if the person is in prison, then there's a way of them getting their freedom back if they are wrongfully convicted. And also I think that if, I don't know what it's like, so I'm not sure if I would answer that like that if it really happened, but I think that if someone in my circle, full circle of my friends or something like that, was killed, I wouldn't want the murderer to just get the easy option to buy death. So I think it's important that the person is not able to live a free life, and I do think that it's a good thing, like for safety, if the person is dead, they can commit any crimes. But I think I would prefer if the person would have time to think about it and maybe feel some kind of remorse. And even if they didn't, they have to stay in jail, so they're not going to get out if they committed such horrible crimes. And I think it's worse if you stay your whole life in prison. And also, if you look at the cases, there are a lot of people that are killed in prison because they raped someone or something like that. And I think that that's a better punishment for someone that did something so horrible than just getting the easy way out and dying.
You make a good point, of course, and I just want to refer to to where you said that they can be rescued from jail if they are found innocent. But I think I forgot to say this earlier, but people on death row end up waiting 10, 20 years for their execution. So by the time the death penalty is uplifted, you have spent most of your life already in jail, and it's kind of just really not fair. Oh, it's becoming a lot. Thomas, I think you're first.
I'd say it's really depend on the cases. As you said, there are missed cases where it really isn't necessary or the right reaction, but considering this terrorist attack, I think there should be just if the case is big enough and the number of victims is quite high, I think it's really to be considered.
Okay, so what you're suggesting is increasing the margin needed to get the death penalty. Okay, good point. So I think it was Leonard, Jasmine, Johan, and then Felix again. Okay, then Leonard?
Yeah, I also think that in most cases, death penalty is not the right choice, but it would be better to just serve life in prison, because once I think the risk is still too high to get strong people convicted. Like, if that happens, I think it's a really bad thing that is really risk. And I mean, also there's always people behind the person that does something, like a family or something. I mean, I think we have to consider the really not just the victim's family. I think it would be easier for the family of the person to know they are with life in prison and they can still visit them or something, but not then leave that.
Yes. You make a good point, because unlike many other countries, the US is one of the only countries that has the possibility to have an infinite sentence. Like, there is no top roof to how bad you can get sentenced. There was this recently there was this one gymnastics tutor who was using his status to assault his students, and he was given 180 years in prison. And that is lifelong because nobody can live up to that age. But the thing is, in Germany, I think that life in prison counts as 25 years only. Am I right?
Twice this, three times this,
Ja, die verschluckt, Digga.
Oh, so you can also have an unlimited sentence in Germany. Theoretically. Was the Stephanie,
Yeah. I just want to agree with Sophie, and I think that, for example, the terrorist attack is something horrible, but at the same time, I think like in a 21st century, death penalty shouldn't be a thing, and lifelong penalty is enough. As she said, like sometimes it's even worse than death penalty, and that people shouldn't play like God and decide who should leave or who should die. And if they do that, I don't think that it's anyhow better than the murder itself. Like it's the same murder, but from the government behind, like covered with the law.
Yeah. Okay, Matt. Alex, sorry.
No problem, no problem. I also want to say that when you look at the German constitution with the first paragraph with Die Würde des Menschen ist unantastbar, I think that this is clearly against a death penalty because no one has the right to say whether you should live or die. And I think so that as a German citizen who thinks that the constitution is good, you can be or you shouldn't be for a death penalty.
I agree. And okay, so
I had a question. Do you know what happens when after the death penalty reveals that a person was wrongfully convicted? So does someone get punished for that, or is that just ignored?
It varies, like depending on the crime, because sometimes it is the prosecutor who, for example, in some cases, is a police officer who arrested somebody and gave him, for example, false information. Then they will be prosecuted, and they might be charged of tampering with evidence, and then they will get punished. But in most cases, no, they are not given the death sentence in retribution. It's even worse, not even life in prison, just like some light sentence, because tampering with evidence, I think, lands you only with 10 years in prison. And if he even gets convicted, because I think we all read the book, The Hate You Give, last year. The court sitting was not exactly in the favor of Star. And with what Alex said, I would like to end this discussion and come to my conclusion. I would say that both sides have pretty strong arguments going for them, but I'm also tending against the death penalty because although severe crimes do deserve punishments of equal severity, the risks of a false execution is just too high. You can't just kill somebody and then end up being wrong. It's like you're playing God and you're failing and you're screwing up. And the racial inequality factor that I also mentioned earlier is also devalidates the death penalty, because it's implemented unfairly, and it's obvious that crimes against white people are taken much more seriously than those against black people. And something I forgot, which you mentioned, and I'm thankful that you did, is that it's against the human right, the human right to live, because yeah, no matter what you do, you are still a human. You still have a right to do and act as you please, as long as it's within the law. And the death penalty is just screwing up all of that, all of the hard work that was poured into the Constitution. And with that, these are my sources, and thank you so much for your attention. I got the statistics about how many people are waiting for the execution and how many people are getting executed every year. I got them here, but other than that, weirdly enough, I got all of my sources from my first source. It was as if this topic was made for a presentation. It's quite funny. Like there was a page for arguments, there was a page for statistics, there was a page for history.
You were allowed to ask questions during the presentation. Okay, well, I think you told us a lot, and the presentation was a bit longer because you were allowed to jump in and you had this discussion. So I do not really have to have many questions left. I'm always interested in why does this topic, why did you take this topic?
Well, I mean, part is because of my own interest, because I like to tackle such morally relevant questions, because it's always interested me how people think and how people act, and sense of justice is behind it. I just want to go behind the scenes and find out what they are thinking with the with implementing the death penalty and not doing so, and just how morally representable is it to kill someone for crime. Honestly, and it's also taken a real part of my own life. I base lots of my actions, impulsive actions, which I'm actually proud of the principle an eye for an eye. Like for example, whatever is done to me, I would like to pay back in home. And honestly, now that I talked about this topic, I feel like maybe this is not completely the right approach, because not everything can be solved with retribution, or else this fragile system that we have will not exist, and we have an anarchy.
Maybe we should do revenge
Du kannst wirklich nur die Wurst. Das in Schinken haben, das ultra geil, da richtig viel Protein drin.
What argument against revenge
Das ist das ganze Eis.
revenge if you punish someone, and if I call that revenge, but I think there's so much more than just taking revenge.
I mean, yes, there is much more layers to it than just pure revenge. As I said, it is for protecting the well-being of the citizens, and but other than that, revenge plays a huge role, because during the death sentence or like the actual execution, people are only a specific group of people are allowed in. For example, Felix, I'll come to you in a minute. You can put your hand down. I'll come to you in a minute.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, only a certain group of people are allowed to come. For example, the
prosecuting officer,
the family of the victim, but most importantly, the family of the criminal. Because it's the other way around. The family of the victim is the most important part here, because they were wrong. Somebody did some unspeakable deeds to their family, and it's having this bit of closure that the guy that did it got something he truly deserved, depending on the method, somewhat painful death, it's just kind of help the victims' families live with the crime, and depending on the crime, if the victim's still alive, also the victim, so that they feel safe that this person will not harm me anymore. It's deeply, it's very psychologically rooted that that there's this feeling of unsafety, and that when this threat is finally gone, a person just manages to ease up. Yeah, Felix, you had a question?
It's not exactly to the death penalty, but how does Donald Trump stand to the death penalty?
Probably he stands. He's for the death penalty because he probably wants as many people sentenced as possible because they belong to this ethnic minority that he wants to target. Yeah.
He once publicly said that some of his political enemies should be hanged.
No.
Yeah, because they said that the military should usually think that go against the Constitution of America, and then Trump called that traitors and said they should be hanged.
That kind of answers your question, Felix. Yeah, he would really be pro definitely.
Paid so much attention. You paid a lot of attention.
Johan and Hassan are okay. Johan.
Certain cases where there's very severe crimes against human you can't just equally severe penalty because you would have to repeat these very cruel deeds, and it's just impossible to take all this cruel crimes back to a single person, and I don't even know if that's the aim of a punishment, because in this case you can't get anything equal, so you just have to get them unable to commit any crime and just imprison them or something, because it would be nowhere near the cruelty of the actual crimes to kill them, so there's no point in doing so.
Yeah, I agree. For example, Ted Bundy, in my opinion, should have been thrown into like a high security prison like Alcatraz and like put in solitary confinement for like the rest of his life. That would have been my sentence had I been this judge. Okay, last one, yeah?
I just wanted to add about this Trump that he once posted on Twitter that guy who killed a Ukrainian refugee in the bus, if you remember this case, he stated that he should be killed by the penalty, so yeah, he's for the penalty.
Okay, so that's an interesting topic. Of course, that this might refer to how he actually stands with the penalty, but it can also show that he's just he's doing it for I'm gonna call it for the show. Like he maybe he's not convinced, but this is what everybody wants to hear. That he would that he wants justice, that he wants fair treatment of immigrants as well as Americans, but maybe he just does that so he it's like Wahlkampf here in Germany. People say things on their posters and speeches, and then end up not implementing them at all. So it's complicated whether or not from the statements we can draw that he's pro or against the death penalty.
I mean, it's not for him to decide if someone will be killed by death penalty, but you think he shows that he's for it because
Yeah, I mean it is not his choice. It is not his choice who is killed or not. But if he says something that is morally representable in most of the parts of the American society, he will get more followers. He will be represented more. Of course, I think Trump is a person who would support the death penalty. I have no actual claim, but it's just a hypothesis based on how we act, but you could also just be doing so to get more voters.
No, but he does not say it in the opposite way. So you don't remember any comments of him saying, oh, we shouldn't do that, that kind of excuse.
Überall, ich will so Würsten nicht auf. Wenn in der Pause.
Yeah.
Fressen wir doch mal.
His actual position.
In der Pause fressen wir einfach mal.
Okay, so there are any more questions?
Okay, then let's just continue with some feedback. We still have to feedback to Thomas and Tina as well now. Decide who you would like to address. So what did you think about those two presentations? You don't have to compare them because they were a bit different, but what did you like about the two presentations? What might be improved in future ones?
So, welchen soll ich sagen?
You just pick who you would like to give feedback, so you can also talk to both.
Yeah,
Hä, geben wir
so
zu zweit
about Thomas' CFS, I really liked the CFS, and I think it was very good. It had a really good structure, but I do think that you could have spoken a little bit more freely, but other than that, it was very good. And Tukina's CFS is the exact same. I really like the structure and that you were able to answer our questions, and I think that you make the topic is really heavy and it's a very sensitive topic, and I think you portrayed that very well, and yeah.
Thank you. Can we just finish the feedback giving round and then have a break after that?
I can say something to both presentations. So with Hinan, I think I really like the way you prepared, because you could answer every question and you had your own opinion, and I really respect it. Very good. And Thomas, I think he did a very good job, because he implemented various examples and life stories which help you to really feel through all of the emotions the people back then, the black people, had to endure every day. And I think it were two very good presentations. Yes.
Thank you. That was good feedback.
Yes, no problem.
Finally.
Oh, Alex. Right, you remember that? So this one was really because, yeah, you think it wasn't just superficial topics. Gave examples.
Thank you.
But I don't criticize you. I just want to
Finally.
find what pearls there are.
Oh, Alex. Finally, Alex. Jetzt kommt mal Ben.
Everything you will learn.
I like the way you structured it, and the part that you added those statistics, and overall in your language you really well. And but to be honest, I feel like this thing was a little bit weird. No, I like Tukan myself, but for a school presentation, this felt a little bit weird.
Well, I mean, all I can say to that is that I was
So voll
given the choice from either between this and abortion. In my opinion, I don't think. Yeah, like he gave. And another reason was just that I don't think I have any right to talk about the other topic in detail, because was quite frankly not my choice. I don't think
Das war brillant.
And give us facts, or if you comment on
Achso, stopp. Was sind meine Kirsche Stan?
Es bewegt sich doch. Die Bälle zittern doch.
Für die Deutsch-LK haben, das ist genau der Punkt, falls ihr das schon gemacht habt, einen Kommentar und einen Text, wenn ihr das schreibt. Sorry. Bei dem einen haltet ihr eure Meinung zurück und außen vor, bei dem anderen wisst ihr eure Meinung auch, um die jetzt zu belegen und zu darlegen. Also bei der Präsentation habt ihr gesagt, die Möglichkeit. Und ich dachte, ihr habt die Themen sehr gut.
Also es ist so, dass man so einen Bereich kann. Also ich wollte
Wodka Sex.
That's why I asked you, why did you pick the topic? Maybe you have
Wodka
Ist das mal der Dings hier? Das ist ein Hintergrundbild.
Mit Mr. Goof.
you have finished?
Ich nehme aber eigentlich wieder dich. Ist lustiger.
But I also think that you argumented well throughout dialogue about choosing this topic. And overall, in the end, you presented it very well.
Feedback over. So let's have a 5-minute break. And
Jetzt wieder gegessen haben. Jetzt kommen die Würste.
Leonard, Digga!
Die Würste sind so widerlich, Robert, das ist echt.
Bro, der hat Fisch gekauft.
Komm, wir holen die Würste jetzt, Digga.
Werden die dir.
Oder das ist ein veganer Aufstrich, den haben wir extra wegen dir
Ja,
gekauft.
und die anderen das Fleisch.
Wenn die Person was macht,
Das ist so, wenn ich Fleisch
dann verstößt ja schon
Ja, trotzdem stimmt.
100 Jahre. Das stimmt schon. Deswegen verpasst
Digga, ich glaube, es ist vorbei.
Kinder sagen, Auge für Auge ist scheiße. Kommt drauf an, aber bei sowas finde ich Auge für Auge.
Das war's.
Die Begründung hat gefehlt.
Nein!
Aber ich habe auch so Respekt vor dir natürlich.
Das war's.
Das war's. Doch, das war's.
Nee?
Warte, wenn mit dem.
Digga, ich werde jetzt so die Würste essen, das glaubst du gar nicht. Stan wirft eine Wurst aus dem Fenster, bitte. Okay.
Laute Pause.
Ey, Roman, Digga.
Alex, das ist ja schon ein Mullet, was du da jetzt gehabt hast, ne?
Oh.
Ja? Was? Deine Haare?
Ja, wir schneiden ja noch zurecht, Digga.
Bro, wir machen eine Stunde.
Richtig Film oder nicht?
Ja.
Nein. Bro, jetzt, wir müssen die Wurst testen.
Ja, das ist die Würste, Leute.
Bruder, die Wurst geht nicht mal auf, Digga.
Die machen wir nicht auf. Scheiße, Digga.
Gib mal eine Brezel.
Alex,
willst du eine Brezel?
Danke.
Ich will eine Brezel.
Nein, du Trottel.
Hä, Bruder?
Was mir mit der Hand kratzt.
Oh.
Georgie, der Felix.
Hast du das Level eigentlich jetzt geschafft?
Das dritte.
Oh, Alter, die. Okay, Sophie, du hast recht, die Wurst stinkt ziemlich.
Ja,
Digga, wie lang ist diese Wurst, Digga? Digga, es ist eine lange Wurst, Digga.
Das soll lustig sein.
Oh, das stimmt, geil.
Digga, die riecht so geil, das ist gar nicht ekelhaft. Ich will die nicht. Stan macht so, Digga.
Wer ist was von da? Stopp.
Warte, brich mal ein Stück für Stan ab, das jetzt hier aus dem Fenster werfen. Stan,
Leute, wir haben hier ein Stück
Zieh mich da nicht rein, hallo, nein.
Stan, wirf bitte.
Ich kann nichts werfen.
Warte, ich werfe. Alter!
Die so klebrig, die Wurst.
Hast du dieses Geometry Dash Level jetzt geschafft eigentlich?
Nee, ich bin bei 97%.
Also ich.
7? Ja, ist Stan.
Digga, ich denk das scheiße, Digga.
ich kann nicht.
Boah, Digga.
Ja, boah, das stimmt so.
Ich kann nicht gut dashen bei diesem Buch.
Schmeckt wie Kacke, Alter. Nein, wirf die Wurst aus.
0 von 10, ich hab's jetzt auf dem Fenster.
Ja, okay, ich film. stell mich davor. Oh.
Leute, wer die Wurst findet, kriegt ein Lukas Holmes Special.
Mach schnell.
Grüßung.
Der Marc findet sehr geil, Digga.
Weg ist der Wurst, Leute. Warte, hier nimm.
Was soll ich damit, Digga?
Das Kameramann.
Ja, okay. Ich film Roman.
Gut, dass du die vorhin noch nicht aufgemacht hast.
Boah, Digga, den kann ich raus.
Wollen wir eine Wurst machen?
Das ist einfach eklig, das riecht einfach widerlich.
Ey, halt ja nicht gekauft.
Roman, jetzt musst du es da liegen lassen, genau da.
Wer so Mitte des Raumes?
Ja, ja.
Ich bin auch vegan.
Das ist Haram, glaube ich.
Felix, bist du nicht auch vegan?
Wenn das die so.
Wer kommt da jetzt? Marc?
Kannst du die Milchwurst
Du musst doch direkt hinmachen.
links aus dem Fenster dann dran wird.
Wieso ich aber?
Oh, geh doch damit weg, Roman.
Du hast sie doch gekauft, Digga.
Bruder, Felix Fröhlinger, Digga.
Ja, gar nicht gekauft.
Also wer hat die gekauft, Leute?
Ich wollte die nicht, ich wollte mit so Käsewürsten in der Ecke.
Unglaublich.
Kannst du die kaufen, aber ich wollte sie.
Mach weg den Scheiß.
Leg nach vorne.
Was? Hast du gerade die ganze Wurst runtergeworfen? Versteck dich am Schrank. Ja, okay, ja, okay. Wir verstecken jetzt die Wurst. Wir verstecken jetzt die Wurst.
Ja, wo der sagt, versteckst du noch. Hier im Schrank.
Roman muss in die Heizung machen. In die Heizung rein, dann gaben wir die so richtig.
Das war Alex' Idee.
Nein, das war nicht.
Alex hat gerade die Idee gehabt, Digga.
Oh, Alex.
Alex ist neuer Fan-Favorite, Digga. Guck mal, hier ist unser Müll. Oh. Nein!